That's where from the charities, I'm always saying, you don't have to wait till everything's perfect for you to get started. Start small, take baby steps, do that incremental improvements whilst you are looking at that direction of travel using the strategy as well.
Welcome to episode 1 of season 4 of Starts at the Top, our podcast about leadership, digital culture and change. I'm Zoe Amma.
And I'm Paul Thomas. Our podcast brings you interviews with leaders from the public, private and third sector who are using digital to navigate uncertainty and forge a path to the future. On today's episode, we speak to Ursula Dolton, Chief Technology Officer of the British Heart Foundation, about the importance of data and digital transformation projects, personalisation, and about building confident, strong relationships with suppliers. But it's been a while since our last episode back in July, and summer holidays feel like a distant dream. So Zoe, how are you and what have you been up to?
Oh, thanks, Paul. Yes, goodness me, doesn't the summer feel like a long time ago already? Yeah, I had a lovely summer holiday, lots of going to gigs, went to some festivals, which is very nice. Made a trip to Hampshire, Lymington, which was very lovely. But I think we're all back to the grindstone now, aren't we? And doing some really exciting stuff. And obviously there have been a few changes as well. So some people will have seen our announcement about Social CEO Awards, how we're putting that to bed. Although we are planning a special episode based around some of the kind of key things in social CEOs later in this season, looking at which leaders, both in and outside the charity sector, are doing great stuff on social media, using social media for social good, effectively. And what have you been up to, Paul?
Oh, lots. Yeah, I went on holiday. It does seem like a distant dream. Anglesey, which was lovely.
Nice.
And Snowdonia, a lovely part of the world. We'll be going back. Lots of food and lots of summer garden activity, gardening and all that sort of stuff. I guess the other big thing in my life, as you know, we talk about it regularly and you're constantly asking me questions about football. I got back into the Arsenal stadium, so back to supporting football, back to full stadiums of people. I have to admit that 60,000 people was a bit odd to suddenly surround yourself with, especially at the end of the game when everyone was piling out. And I thought, well, I haven't been this close to anyone for about 18 months and got a bit claustrophobic and wanted to jump out the stadium. But other than that, it's all been good.
We've been talking quite a lot, you and I, over the last few weeks about hybrid working and how some of our clients and organisations we're speaking to across different sectors are tackling that. What trends are you seeing in that area?
Well, I think everyone's trying to get back. I think there's some interesting conversations emerging around how different organisations are approaching not being vaccinated and how that works in offices. I think I've found that the meetings that I've gone to have been interesting, where I have perhaps done a lateral flow test the night before going into a meeting room, for example, and sent ahead an email saying, tested last night, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. And not always getting that back from the people that I'm meeting. So I think there's some sort of odd protocols around what to do and what not to do. But I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing now or hearing about now is just the differences there between different organisations doing that in slightly different ways, and how they start to treat or how they start to work or how they start to allow people that haven't been vaccinated back into offices. I heard an example this morning. I think of was it a university or something? I heard an example. Sorry, I should know the example before I cite it. But there was an example of an organisation that said that they weren't going to let people that hadn't been double vaccinated back into the office for the time being until they could figure out a way forward. So I think that's going to be interesting.
I do know someone who works in a brain injury unit, who works on the sort of psychologist side of things, who were saying that they have very strict guidance from their employer that you do need to be vaccinated in order to do the job. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how people tackle that and put rules around that in place, and also legally what they can and can't do. And what are you seeing among the people that you're talking to, Paul, about how people are finding hybrids?
I think it's a mixed bag, really. A lot of the day-to-day people I work with find it much easier to manage their workflow by being at home. That sort of work-life balance typically is much better. I think people are finding ways now to sort of down tools at the right time of the day. I know I find that quite hard, walking away from the laptop or shutting down the laptop and moving away from the office, because the office happens to be our conservatory. You can't sort of leave it. I understand, and I've seen there was an article this week that we should try and share in the show notes as well. But there was an article this week, and I've definitely heard this, that I think some people are missing the commute, not necessarily the working in the office. So it's that separation time, it's that downtime to sit on a train or in a car and move from place to place. I think that is something that seems to be missing from people's days.
Yeah, obviously there have been some developments in this area as ever, which I think have caught our eye. So one of the big things is obviously that Boris Johnson at the Conservative Party conference was talking about working from home. We have obviously had government commenting on working from home before, but it was interesting to see Boris Johnson saying that he thought young workers should return to the office, or they would risk colleagues gossiping about them, or they might lose out on things as well. And in fact, there was even a former cabinet minister, Jake Berry, who one of the fringe events at the conference decided to rename working from home woking from home. So make of that what you will. So it's interesting because this is again another example of where government is saying one thing and business seems to be doing something different.
It's so unhelpful, isn't it? It's I know the headlines focus on the sort of, oh, they're going to gossip about you behind your backs, but I think the only thing that I had any sympathy with in all of that was the sort of the opportunities for younger people who are starting on the career ladder to learn and to spend time with colleagues to sort of learn the trade, I guess, was the thing I took away from that. But obviously it focuses on the negative connotations. The truth of the matter is I don't really think that anyone wants to hear from Boris Johnson about this stuff. What they want to hear is different organisations and how they're approaching things. So, yeah, it's a little bit unhelpful.
There's also stuff in this article, looking at it, which I don't think I agree with. So there's some stuff here about remote working means that your network can shrink. Research has shown that during the pandemic, professional and personal networks alike shrunk by 16%. I'm surprised by that because, if anything, I feel like I've been talking to people more, albeit online. Wayne Murray, who I know listens to this podcast, bless him, and many people know who work in the charity sector, he did this great thing during the pandemic where he's been having coffees with people on Zoom all through the last 18 months, which I think is wonderful. So I'm sure his network has grown, which is great. But I'm surprised to read this finding. I suppose if you are in that position, then you've got to think of some different ways to network, and it's so easy to do that on social media.
Yeah, hard agree. I think I've had more conversations, more access to people, more opportunities because of social networking, and particularly LinkedIn for me at this moment in time have really opened up a lot of discussions with audiences and with people that I wouldn't have spoken to before, and also reconnected me with people that I used to work with who suddenly sort of come out of the woodwork and said, oh, I didn't know you did that, Paul. Can you come and talk to us about it? So there's a real opportunity, I think, to sort of address that side of things at the moment. So no, I'd hard agree with you. I don't agree with that. Anyway, Facebook.
Yeah, so one of the big stories of the week, and in fact, two big stories. Do you want to summarise this for us, Paul?
Well, the first I heard of it was when my wife told me that WhatsApp was down, and I cheered because I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with that platform where I hate it more than I love it. But the fact that it was down was not sort of worrying me too much. But then obviously this was suddenly headline news, and it was the fact that Facebook was out for, was it 6 hours, I think?
I think it was 7 in the end.
Was it 7 hours?
It was a long chunk of time.
A long chunk of time. But the basic issue was that Facebook have built most of Facebook's infrastructure on Facebook itself. So when that platform goes over for one reason or another, and we're still not entirely sure what the issue was, it means that they disconnected it from the entire internet, seemingly. And it was exacerbated by the fact that everything, i.e. the door locking systems and things like that, the badge recognition service at their door, is also hosted on Facebook. So the people that needed to fix the issue, couldn't even get into the building. So anyway, I mean, a long story short, Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook team apologized on Twitter, which is quite funny in itself. And Facebook came back up. My initial reaction was, well, I don't tend to use Facebook as much as I used to. I don't necessarily like using WhatsApp. I didn't miss Instagram for those 7 hours. So, what's the fuss about? But then, of course, you look at the wider implications to people that run their small businesses off of Facebook, or charities and other organizations that have a massive reliance on it as a platform. And then you start to sort of figure out that there are some potential huge losses here, both for Facebook in a financial way, but also for the organizations that are so heavily reliant on it. And I think where we come out at is probably this point about Facebook and Google in particular as two massive organizations that suddenly have so much power over so much of the internet sitting in Silicon Valley. And probably what we should look at is this being a huge wake-up call for everyone to look at what does this mean for the future of the web and how we have come to know it. And how do we start to wrestle some of that back from the organisation? But I know, Zoe, you think this is probably a step too far for Facebook to come back from.
I do. I think there have been so many negative stories now, and these two things happening very close together. The whistleblower, which we're going to talk more about in a moment, appearing in front of Congress, and then also this outage for a very, very long amount of time, isn't it, has made people realise how dependent they are, not just on Facebook, but also the other products that it owns, Instagram and WhatsApp, and how our whole lives and means of transacting and commerce and all sorts of things are very much intertwined with that. So absolutely. I mean, I feel the only way from here is that they are going to get regulated. I think that government in a lot of countries is starting to get very concerned about this. Certainly in the US, they seem particularly worried about this at the moment. And it's interesting to see some of the support building for action being taken from what I've heard in the news. So absolutely, I think that Facebook as we know it is not going to be the Facebook of the future.
Yeah, it's coupled with the Frances Haugen.
Yeah, so obviously Frances has appeared in front of Congress, and she has talked, I think, very sort of devastatingly and very sort of comprehensively about how Facebook has put profit above safety from what she's seen, and some really sort of worrying examples. For instance, she said that Facebook has reversed changes to its algorithm once the 2020 president's election was over. They allowed information to spread on the platform, she alleges. And time and again, from her perspective, she thinks that they have put profit ahead of safety. And of course, we've all seen the story that started a few weeks ago about the research which Instagram did into harmful content, which wasn't shared more widely, and it doesn't appear as if action was taken on that. And it's interesting also to see what she's saying about Mark Zuckerberg, and she said that she doesn't think he set out to make it a platform where harm was caused or where hate was shared, but he has allowed these choices to be made, and the unintended consequences of those have been very serious for a lot of people.
So it comes back down to strength of leadership.
Yeah, I think that is one of the key things that emerges from this story, and also what the values of Facebook as a platform are, and whether they are genuinely compatible with the organisations that use them, whether you're a charity, whether you're a coffee shop, whether you're a big public sector body. People have described this as Facebook's British American tobacco moment, and it really is.
This season is shaping up to be a great one, and we have some fantastic guests lined up. So if there's someone that you'd like to hear from, we may struggle with Mark Zuckerberg, but do let us know who you'd like to hear from.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely we're going to get him on the podcast, especially given what we've just said about Facebook.
Especially now we've dissed him.
Now for our conversation with Ursula Dolton that we recorded last month. We didn't give Ursula a proper introduction on the day, so here is what you need to know about her. Ursula brings together a cohesive blend of strategic, commercial, operational and technology capabilities from over 20 years of cross-sector exposure to shape, execute and implement revolutionary technology-driven visions. She joined the British Heart Foundation in March 2016 and was appointed as the first Chief Technology Officer for the charity in May 2019. She has led digital and technology transformation across the organisation and is responsible for delivering the BHF's technology strategy in support of its charitable objectives, with a focus on how technology can best support research and innovation, help people affected by heart and circulatory disease, and drive income growth across the BHF's commercial, retail, and fundraising offerings. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Ursula, welcome to Starts at the Top.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Zoe.
We're so pleased to have you here, and we know there's lots of exciting things that you've got going on at British Heart Foundation that you're going to be sharing with us today. And I know you've also been doing some really interesting work on the next stage of your digital transformation journey too. Would you be able to briefly set the scene for us all about what's been happening over the pandemic digitally?
I can indeed. I mean, if it would help, I will quickly give you a brief introduction to the BHF, British Heart Foundation as well. So BHF was formed in 1961 by a group of medics because that year, over half of all UK's deaths were from heart and circulatory diseases. So I mentioned 1961. So we actually are celebrating our 60th birthday this year. So in the past 60 years, we have actually awarded a total of 1.6 billion sterling pounds in research grants, which has immensely contributed to research into three main areas like heart disease, circulatory diseases, and their risk factors. So all the work we do, everything we do is to generate that income so we can provide those grants for the heart research that we are doing. So that's where the whole digital transformation is so important to us, especially in the past 18 months since the pandemic. We have found out charities such as ours who are very reliant on the retail sector, the high street, the physical shops, and the physical fundraising activities. Everybody had to pivot to that. How can we do this in a digital manner? How can we really create this income, generate this income digitally? So digital transformation has been one of those key activities for us in the past 18 months. So I can carry on with lots of details, Zoe. I'll let you actually ask me the questions and I'll really bring all the exciting things we've been doing to life in our discussion now.
Oh, brilliant. Well, we're really keen to hear more. And when we last spoke a few weeks ago, you talked about some of the work that your team are doing around data. And I know data is going to be a bit of a theme of our discussion today. So we'd love to hear a bit more about the work that's been going on in that area.
Definitely. I mean, in the current world, using the right data to make informed decisions is so key. Mainly business decisions that are based on the insight we have obtained from really good quality data. So I think data gives us raw material that we can use to generate insight. For example, like the air pollution campaign. So when we were going into the pandemic, we were running this air pollution campaign. And so how much support and the geographical locations gives us such rich insight. So that data will help us build even better campaigns in future as we generate intelligence to tell us which messages are the most effective in generating support. So that's one area for us where we are really focusing on data. The other areas we were talking a few weeks ago is very much around that. How do we support our customers? How do we really support everybody who interacts with the BHF, whether they come to our shops or whether they take part in one of the fundraising activities or visit our website? How do we really give them that seamless, that consistent interaction with us and the information they need? That all comes down to how well we use our data.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great to hear about all the thinking that's going on in this British Heart Foundation. And the reason why I wanted to just pause and focus on this point a little more is I feel like as a sector, we're starting to talk about data-driven decisions more, but I'm not sure that the term is as widely understood yet as it could be. Are you able to share a bit more about your take on what a data-driven decision is and what you need in place to make a really good data-driven decision?
Definitely. I think we need that right quality data, because data is the raw material we capture, like the example I was using, for example, that like the air pollution campaign. So we have to make sure we have mechanisms to capture that right data, and that is captured from a technology's point of view into the right platforms. And I'm going to really go down the technology's view now. Because like at the BHF, we do capture the data, we do capture the right data, but then we store it in a number of platforms. And then for us to get the insight to make the business decisions we want, we can't actually bring that data together to formulate that story we need. So that's where we mean by the insights. Like, let's get that quality data, the right data, and then build the story, build the insights so we can make informed decisions. That's what we are trying to do. And my understanding is that's what a lot of organizations are trying to do. But doing it is the challenge. How do we really bring these siloed data from different platforms together and actually get the story this data tells us and understand the story as well?
I guess the important thing there is it's getting the data all in one place is, technologically there's an answer to that. Putting a layer over the top that means that you can read that data, there's a technology answer to that. So that would seem fairly straightforward. The next bit is the decision making itself and getting the culture of data-led decision making through the business. So can you tell us a little bit more about where you feel that you are with that? Are you a lone voice in saying that you need to do this within the organization, or are you already on that journey as a leadership team?
Yeah, as a leadership team, I have to say I'm really fortunate. We are on this journey together. So as a BHF executive team, we have identified this BHF-wide data strategy, for example. Having that consistent, holistic data strategy for the organization is really important, because we have a big retail function, a fundraising function, like the healthcare, the research, all of them. We have been capturing this data separately. We have been making the different decisions, but we've started to really focus in, let's get this holistic view. So as a leadership team, it's number one, it's really a high priority for us. Let's get the data right so we can make those informed decisions. And it's something that's really driven by us as well. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking about also, how that then trickles down through the organisation, I guess, and that, everyone making different, the micro decisions that we take day to day often are done through gut instinct or through assumption and things like that. So making that data available to everyone within the organisation so that sharper decisions are made by everyone throughout the organisation.
Agree. So here we are actually approaching this from a number of angles. As you mentioned, there's the technology side, and then there's the cultural side, and there's the side where we have to put the right processes, the right operating models in place as well. So the leadership, the culture, the processes, the operating models, and of course the technology. And that's something we're very much looking at as part of the overarching data strategy. How do we get all of these things right for us? So for a starter, that I'm a co-sponsor for the BHF data strategy. And so it is very much owned by the executive group at the BHF. And we are also looking at how do we have this governing body so we can oversee all these different activities, improvement activities that's going across the organization in the various functions. So there is that oversight given by a team of specialists within the organization. So we are putting that structure and the framework in place as well. And at the same time, there are a number of activities that's going on at different levels. How do we actually create that, like educate people, show the importance of data-driven decision making, the importance of data? Because I think every organization now got to be very much of a data-driven organization, because that's what brings value for us. So we're encouraging all our employees, saying every job they do is focus on data. So it's easy to use the word data very generously. It's also that insight-led, the metrics, the dashboards, because I think it comes in a number of formats, and that's what we are doing. It's showing them it's nothing new. It's something you do always, but just bring it to the surface a bit more.
And just one more question on this for me. I think the interesting thing, when I used to work in a big accountancy firm, and when they started getting interested in what they could do around data-driven decisions, and they started to surface some of the data, it brought up just as many opportunities as it did windows into problems and hurdles or things that were happening within the organization that they weren't aware of, but the data was starting to shine through. Are there any examples of real lessons that you've learned that you've been able to put straight into action because you've managed to surface something you didn't really know was happening?
Of course, definitely. I think we are more or less doing that every day at the moment, because I'm really, especially from a technology perspective, I'm very much pushing my teams, like the operational teams for a starter, to take that data-driven, that decision-making culture. So we are very much like operationally looking at saying, okay, for example, if I look at the utilization of certain equipment to various utilization, stats that we get given, the teams are making such informed decisions based on all that data that they are getting. And this is something we didn't focus much before, where now I can see it's really coming to the surface. We are saying, get the stats, get that insight, let's make the decisions based on the data, the stats we have. So operationally, I see my teams on a daily basis improving how they do it, given the data that's put in front of us. And there's been a number of times we've actually found out things saying, oh, that's a surprise. We didn't know that we're doing it. And some of those are a bit sensitive, so I won't actually share it with you publicly, Paul, because it's I think every organization has. I think we could be performing a bit better. We can be much more efficient. And I think that's something we're coming across on a daily basis.
Excellent. No, I won't ask you to go through the skeletons in the closet. Don't you worry.
We all got those in our organizations, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask, just for charities who are earlier on in the journey, because it sounds like you've put so much work into all of this and everyone's on the same page with it, which is really great. For charities who are perhaps earlier on, perhaps if they've got a bit more of a traditional board and they really want to make more data-driven decisions, but they're not sure how to get started or how to change that culture to make it happen, do you have any advice for them?
I think so. What I can do is like the journey we have been and the lessons we've learned as well. Because the moment we say data, we always think, oh, it is actually such a huge thing. We have to bring in a bunch of highly paid consultants, get them to write a data strategy, give us all this guidance and all those things. And it's taken as it has to be really this strategy, this top-down thing. I think it has to be approached by all different angles. It's not one way or the other. So that's something I really realized at the BHF as well. Show the importance of those data-led decision-making, the incremental data-led decision-makings for those operational teams, that how it can add value on a day-to-day basis, because by acknowledging that, you're automatically creating that culture in the organization, saying, think that data-led thinking culture, and it doesn't have to necessarily always come from the top, and it doesn't have to be always this is a strategy, you have to do it. I think people just got to respect we have to make informed decisions based on that insight we get. At the same time, you do need that strategy as well. So you got to have that strategy, so that direction of travel. So that work needs to be done as well. So that's where, from the charities, I'm always saying, you don't have to wait till everything's perfect for you to get started. Start small, take baby steps, do that incremental improvements, whilst you are looking at that direction of travel using the strategy as well. And that's the approach we've taken.
And that incremental change can be so powerful, isn't it? It's often a very underrated part of the whole transformation journey.
Definitely. So that's one of the things that we tend to sometimes not really give that importance. We always say transformation is huge. It has to be this huge initiative. Actually, those incremental improvements are so important as well.
Absolutely, completely with you on that. Moving on to an area that's very closely related to data, I know you and your team have been doing some work around personalisation as well. So can you tell us a bit more about what you've been doing?
Yes, we've just started this initiative, actually, program of work on actually our customer journeys and how do we really give our customers that personalized customer experience. Because as I mentioned earlier, we capture data at various stages of a customer journey, their end-to-end customer journey, and that from a technology, from a systems point of view, that data is stored in a number of different places. So when the same customer interacts with us at different points, whether it's to raise funds with us, take part in some campaign, or give some donations to our shops and all those things, we don't have that consistency in the way we interact with them. So what we've really focused on doing, especially in the last year, is okay, how do we get that integrated platforms to bring that data together? And I think Paul mentioned earlier that technology side, that's something we can do. Then focusing on the operating model, how do we really interact with these customers, that journeys and all that? Because there's the technology, there's the data, and then there's the way we interact with them. So we're doing this massive piece of work, this program on looking at that whole customer data platforms to the MarTech stack. And the outcome we want is that we want to give the personalized experience with anybody who interacts with the BHF. I'm really looking forward to seeing how all this progresses, because we've just started this work, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, coming back to my example of a charity, perhaps who's a bit more traditional, or maybe they're on a bit of a budget, how would you advise charities who really want to move forward with personalisation, but perhaps they're not quite at the stage that you guys are already at?
We all know technology is costly. it's a given. But then it's actually looking at it quite smartly. You have the opportunities to really interact with your tech partners, identify opportunities to get that best value solutions, because you don't have to have the best, most expensive technology solution. Something I've learned is actually interacting with our tech partners and explaining the actual business problem and working with them. You figure out what's the most value-added solution that is fit, that is right for your organization, that's fit for purpose as well as fits your budget. I think that's the key thing. It's working with them to find out actually how can you get the maximum value product, and how can you actually implement it in the best possible way and the most cheapest way as well, but make sure it's right. In my experience, in the technology partners we work with, they've been more than generous. They've really helped us. When we've asked the questions, they've helped us. And I'm sure they would do with all the charities as well, because society is such now that they are really keen to help, because they want to actually do that tech for good activities. And I think there's so much of opportunity there.
Thank you. And one of the reasons why I'm really keen to pick up on your answer there is I know in our conversation together a few weeks ago, we talked about some of those shared challenges between the charity sector and the corporate world. And I know between us all, we've got some experience in both camps. And in a situation now, aren't we, as we come gradually out of the pandemic, all of us have even more dependency on technology as charities, and that partnering with those companies is going to be really key, what that looks like and how people work together. Do you have any thoughts on those shared challenges and how people can work effectively together with their suppliers?
Definitely. I mean, like we need to provide digital products and services with a high quality of customer experience, regardless of the sector. So I mean, that's a key. And I always say, technology is technology regardless of the sector. So that's one key thing. But as I mentioned earlier, the partners are very keen to work with us, because you probably notice I use the word partner than a supplier, because I think that's a big differentiator. Because in the past, we've always taken that traditional approach. We are the customer, we are buying this off you, and you're the supplier. And in that's a very transactional relationship. And most of the time, it's very much like, what can I get out of this? It's not a two-way interaction. And I think that's changed a lot, very much to a partnership. That's where it's common. I talk to different like commercial organizations, and we're all in this together because of the digital need, and every organization basically faces the same challenges. I think people want to partner with you, and people want to really figure out that problem, to how to resolve the problem together. And there's that the pride as well, by actually achieving something together, because they want to be seen to be doing something good, as I mentioned earlier. So it's definitely partnerships is a way to go, and working together, coming to that common solution, which is a win-win for both parties.
It definitely is. And I think what you've described there really well in that partnership model that you've got with tech partners is about where you've got shared goals and shared values and a shared understanding of the challenges that you as the client are facing. Is there anything that you would recommend then to other charities about how to do due diligence on shared values? Because that's quite a hard thing to do, isn't it, in procurement? And I say that as someone who sat on both sides of the table.
Indeed, it is. One thing that we always say is, before we even get to a procurement, or we need to have a clear vision of what successful implementation will deliver, and stay focused on that. Because I think that's another key thing, isn't it? We sometimes say we need to go get a technology solution, we need a system, and then the business are trying to figure out and articulate what they might need. So one of the key things that we always do is like, let's really us understand what is our vision, what does success look like, and what would this implementation will deliver for us, because that helps us keep focused. That's way before we start the procurement activities. Then we have to balance getting the stakeholders involved as well, because it's not something just the tech teams and supplier / partner nowadays do. So I always say it's a triangular relationship between the business, the technology teams, and the partner, the implementation partner, because you cannot deliver these solutions alone. So to your point, Zoe, it's like, before procurement starts, it's very much having that clear vision, really figuring out what success would look like, and agreeing that this is what we want to achieve from this, and have that focus, and then only start the procurement discussions and start the procurement process. You have to do that together with the business. It's not one party who owns it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really tempting, isn't it, to skip that stage, but it's well worth the investment of time, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. And especially like the personalization discussion we were having before, and this program of work we've started, we invested a fair bit of time. We worked with one of our partners to truly understand that business need. How are we actually collectively working with the business to really get them to understand what success would look like as well? So that's so important.
I guess the big vendors as well that are out there selling these technologies are all looking for case studies, particularly at the moment where we're all sort of shifting the way that we do work. You can think of several big household names in technology that will be bashing down the door, I would imagine, of charities big and small, just to say, well, we're working to provide a solution to, for example, the amount of people that have had to suddenly start working from home or in different remote locations.
You're so right, Paul. I think that's one of those things that as charities, sometimes we're so hesitant to reach out to these tech firms and ask them that question, saying, do you mind helping us? Because we feel like actually, if we start that discussion, if we start that conversation, we'll have to part with a lot of money. Not necessarily. That's where we kind of restrain by saying, oh, if we start this conversation, that means we have to spend, thousands of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I'm saying, no, it doesn't hurt to actually go have that conversation, because quite often, to your point, they will help us. They will really help us understand what we need to and show us that best way to get to the solution as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we last spoke, you mentioned that you had a partnership with Microsoft, where some of these kind of philosophies about how best to work together really came into play. Can you tell everyone a bit more about that?
Of course, I can. I mean, BHF has a great strategic partnership with Microsoft, and we are very proud of that, because I'm sure I can openly tell this about Microsoft Tech to Inspire Action. The program has been very much supported by Microsoft, and they have their team who are very dedicated to the charity sector, who are really keen to support the charities. And I know they proactively reach out to the charities saying, how can we help? I think in lots of times, what I've noticed with Microsoft is they are absolutely willing to help us, very willing to help us, but we got to know what actually questions to ask them as well, because we are the experts in our field. They are the experts in the tech world. So that's something we've worked with Microsoft. So they come and help us. They run a lot of workshops. They show us, myself and the team, where can we get the best synergies from the investments we've made with them. So it's not just us buying the products from them. They really show us how we can actually get the maximum. And they're properly helping us with these personalization activities, the data platforms as well. So I think, as I mentioned to Paul earlier, it's reaching out to them, asking them, because my experience, they've gone out of their way to help, and we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing at the moment without their help. So it's I can give kudos to Microsoft on that, because they've been really supportive to us.
That's great to hear. Really encouraging story about a partnership with a tech company. And is there anything that you would suggest to charities who might be looking to develop a really good partnership in that area, where they might want to have perhaps a bit more of that value add and really working together effectively around those additional areas of support?
I think the key thing is it's making sure that when you have the conversations with these tech partners, very much having that first, the business conversation. It's not that I want a technical solution. Here you go. Don't ask me any other questions. Just give me the technical solution. Then that's a difference. When we have the conversations, we always say, we have a business challenge, we have a business need here. The truth is, we don't know what technology we might need, but we need to solve this business problem. So very much taking that step back and looking at it from that outcomes, what value are we trying to really get here point of view. I think that's the key thing for any charity. Not thinking that in that little blinkered manner, saying we need to get a technical solution here, let's go buy something off the shelf or with from one of our tech companies. Take a step back, look at what are we trying to achieve as a business, and then work with these companies to say, this is what we're trying to achieve, because some of it may be resolved by the platform, the technical solution, but quite a lot of it is actually the way you work, the different processes, and how you implement the business change, capabilities. It's that whole package that you have to look at, not just the technology and the technical solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely on board with that. So what lies ahead for you at British Heart Foundation? It sounds like you're right in the thick of doing all these different, very exciting projects, and it's taking you in a really brilliant new direction. What do you see being your key digital priorities over the next 12 months?
Yes, making us this amazing digital charity organization, because what we want to be doing is, because we have this big initiative around getting more into the online retail area, because it's like, yes, we have our shops out there, but we want to really get into that online retail market much more, and do those various online fundraising activities. It's giving our customers the options, because I think that's what the pandemic has brought us, giving the customer, giving anybody who interacts with the organization the option, saying they can interact with us in person, face to face if they want to, but if they want to, they can interact with us digitally as well. It's the various ways that they can interact with us. And that's what we want to be in the coming few months, saying we provide that service regardless of how they want to interact with us, in that very customer-centric manner as well. And we know lots of people want to interact with us now digitally. So that's going to be the focus, and that is our focus.
Offering people that choice is so key, isn't it? It's something I think organisations like banks have probably known for years.
Definitely. I mean, we were talking about different payment options, like, when you're fundraising, because that's another huge area we have to look at, because as you say, those choices, people want to pay in different ways, like we're talking about digital wallets and all those things. I think it's a really exciting time, and charities should be really going for it.
Definitely, and there's a real potential there to shift the model, isn't there, with the sort of traditional model of how charities interact with the public and donors and vice versa.
Definitely. So that's why I think we are in this really, I mean, as a charity, we are in this stage where so many opportunities, and we just got to grab them. And yes, you have to be secure. You have to really make sure you're compliant and all those things, because with going that very digital, you have to really bring all that to the surface, as well, as you very well know. And this is an area you focus on as well, isn't it? And but it's just say, be a bit daring. It's like positive disruption is really exciting, because that's how we will move forward.
Can I just ask on that point, and how you sort of drive that home? Digital transformation is a journey for everyone within the organisation, and your customers as well need to understand that. But how can you give us a couple of examples of how you're bringing that to life for people within British Heart Foundation? So, not leaving them behind. We come back to this stat all the time, that 70% of digital transformation projects fail because people don't feel bought in. So how are you engaging everybody else, especially at this time when everyone's remote working?
I mean, we always say it's like everybody has to be a fundraiser, and everybody has to really think of innovation as something they do, on a day-to-day basis. So I actually, when we went into the pandemic last year, one of the key things I did was I created a technology advisory group for the British Heart Foundation. That is bringing in a number of industry experts, like tech experts, to form this group where they can advise us as an organization how we can actually take on this digital journey and the transformation, all these innovations that we want to really come up with. And that group meets on a regular basis. So what we have is, we have our teams, the fundraising teams, my tech teams, all of them come up with these amazing ideas, and they come and present these ideas, and they get all the support. A number of times this technology advisory group they've got so excited with the ideas that's been presented. They said, "Why don't wait till the next meeting that's scheduled? Why not we have some mini workshops?" And just so excited to support the teams. I think that naturally generates that passion, the excitement in the organization, saying it's not just internally. We've got these experts from we've got from the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, we've even got Gartner in there, and then Barclays Bank, all of them. So number of different experts who've come in to support. It's just showing that there's us as the executive group and the technology function, because I've got my executive group colleagues in that in those meetings as well. It's like everybody's bought into it, and they get the encouragement to innovate even more then.
Excellent. Good to hear everyone's working together. As the title of the podcast says, starts at the top, but you can't forget everyone else underneath that layer.
Definitely, Paul. And that group is one of those times we are all definitely working together.
And one last final question from me. Digital challenges coming up in the next 12 months. What are the big things that you see on the horizon, not just for the British Heart Foundation, but for everyone? Given the context of the world we live in now and some of the big changes that are pushing through, what's the big thing one big thing that you think might be on the horizon for everyone?
I mean, from a digital point of view, I think when we talk about everything is data and everything is accessible online, the biggest concern I always have is that is, of course, the safety, the data, various data breaches. I think that's a given, isn't it? So when we talk about the horizon, we have to always say, yes, we always think of, how can we get even better? But we have to always say, don't forget that we have to get better with our safety, the security side. We have to make sure that the data we capture, the information we store is very secure as well. So that's something that's always at the forefront for me, because when we're looking at the horizon, I think it's an exciting time. Personalization is really key. That's something I see, not just charity sector, even the big organizations that one would think are really good at this. They are trying to improve that even more. That's something I've definitely seen. And it's that, of course, we're talking about the hybrid way of working. So it's how do we really make sure that our employees actually have the experience, the working experience, because a hybrid way of working also brings in that challenges. How do we really make sure we get our employees to work and use our internal digital products better, and then provide that customer experience? I mean, there are three key things I can think of at the moment.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Ursula, it's just been a joy to talk to you, and it's fantastic to hear about the exciting work that you're all doing over at British Heart Foundation, and also the way everyone's beginning to really come together behind those shared aims, which is really heartening, and hopefully other charities who may be a little bit earlier on will hear about this and they'll be encouraged by what you've achieved.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Well, we couldn't do any of this alone. We are succeeding here only because we're partnering with some amazing companies, and all our teams are working together. So that's where it's exciting. And again, Zoe and Paul, thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm sure we'll continue to have many conversations offline as well.
Yes,
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Ursula for a fantastic chat, and her enthusiasm was clear to all of us, I think. Really loved that chat. One thing we spoke off mic about right at the end, and I thought was just worth mentioning here, was the way that organisations, particularly those with big digital challenges, should approach big vendors like Microsoft. I know we discussed Microsoft quite a lot in that interview. My thought on this is that Microsoft really do know their technology, but they don't always understand how to apply it to the best effect. They sort of take this as a square box, it fills a square hole approach, rather than how can we make that square box fit into the somewhat circular hole we have over here, which is probably more recognizable to us who have worked in big organizations or smaller organizations before. So it's really vital that as an organization, you understand your power here. The products only fit better, improve more rapidly, add the features that you badly need through use case design and challenges that you present to organizations like Microsoft. So they need you as much as you need them. So going into conversations and discussions with those organizations, bringing that power to the table right from the start is going to get you a long way. Zoe, what were your takeaways?
Well, I'd agree with what you just said, Paul. I think whether you're working with a one-person website developer or whether you're working with a big global tech company like Microsoft, always treat it as a partnership. One of my mantras with the charities that we work with is we work with, not for. And I think that charities get a lot more out of it that way, to be honest. So absolutely, always have open conversations on either side, be frank with each other, talk to people about your business outcomes as much as your digital outcomes, share with them what you're worried about. And if you have that high quality of conversation and that openness and honesty on both sides, then you'll absolutely have much more impact and get a better result all round. So I would really encourage anyone who's working with any kind of supplier to approach the collaboration, and it should be a collaboration at the end of the day, in that peer-to-peer spirit.
Excellent. And we should say here that if anybody that we've interviewed on the podcast already has tackled an issue or has spoken to us about an issue that you're tackling yourself, then please do get in touch. We'd be more than happy to do some of that peer-to-peer connection on your behalf and get you speaking to each other. That would be a really nice outcome of the podcast, to think that we created a little group of leaders who were chatting away to each other about their issues and challenges. So thank you for listening to episode 1 of season 4. We'll be back next week with another episode, but please bear with us if we slip a few days. We've both got a lot on at the moment and all sorts of things going on within our daily lives. So we will endeavour to get there as quickly as we can. Stay tuned to our social channels and we'll be sure to shout about when the next episode is going to appear.
As usual, please send us your feedback. We'd love to hear about anything that you feel that you will do differently after hearing from any of our speakers from the series. You can share your plans, ideas, or questions with us on Twitter. We're at @startsatTheTop1. There's @startsatTheTop1. And you can email us at startsatthetoppodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.
See you next time.